So oftentimes when I think of a crossover, something like a plain and sensible CR-V or RAV4 quickly comes to mind. However, as an enthusiast, something a lot more fun is what I had in mind, and this is exactly what I was thinking of. This is the 2018 Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio. Now this is the 505 horsepower Ferrari-sourced V6 version of Alfa's new crossover, and this week we're up here in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Let's take a look and see if it's truly the performance crossover to get in 2018. So a few months ago when I tested the Stelvio, the regular TI version, I came away relatively impressed with this car. It has a lot of the traditional Alfa DNA in it that kind of differentiates it from all the cookie cutter crossovers that you find in this segment. As you guys know, crossovers are hot in America, and we're seeing a lot of different crossovers from all the different manufacturers. However, this is the one that I've been very excited to drive for the longest time. So I'm going to be really excited to get this one out on the road. But until then, let's talk about the exterior design. Now, between this and the regular model, the Quadrifoglio has its own unique look to the front end. Of course, you're going to have the signature Alfa daytime running lights with bi-xenons. You have an LED turn signal. No fog lights on any of these cars. Instead, Alfa puts like these, big air scoops and inlets. And you can see the car looks a little bit lower, a little bit wider. It's actually about 2 inches wider versus the standard one at about a ½ inch lower. The Quadrifoglio model also gives you these functional hood vents in the hood. These help cool the engine. As you guys know, with a twin turbo V6, you're gonna need a lot of cooling. And overall, the grille of this car definitely has its own unique look to it. This is, of course, the traditional Alfa grille that really shows off well on the Stelvio. I think this is one of the better looking crossovers in the segment. By the way, if you guys like the white color, this tri-coat white is about $2,200. It really shows off the lines of this car. Now, looking at the side profile, you're going to know it's a Quadrifoglio, of course, from the badge, the 4-leaf clover badge. This is part of their lineage, part of their heritage with their performance models. And then this model does come with 20-inch wheels as standard. You can take your choice between a different style of the wheel. These are the standard 5-hole wheels with the graphite finish. You have red brake calipers. Carbon ceramic brakes with yellow calipers are also optional if you guys have $8,000 to spend. The car itself also has staggered wheels. They're 255s in the front, 285s in the back. Now, in terms of the size, this car is a little bit bigger than some of its competition, actually, which it doesesn't look that way. It looks like it's a little bit smaller. Its wheelbase stretches 111 inches long and 185 inches long. It's a little bit larger than things like a Lexus NX or a BMW X3. This is definitely one of the longer crossovers in the segment. Now, back, the design is also equally handsome. You have the same taillights, which are full LED that I showed you on the regular model. Of course, there's a Q4 badge to show that this one is standard with the company's all-wheel drive system. And at the rear, you have your own unique look with the rear diffuser and then the 4 quad exhaust pipes, which sound fantastic. I'll let you guys hear that really quick. So the sound of the Quadrifoglio model is definitely the most exciting part. It sounds like no other SUV in the segment. It's one of the reasons why I personally would probably end up choosing one of these if I needed something like this. Now, being an SUV, the cargo area needs to be practical. So how does the Stelvio compare to that? Now, compared to the regular one, it's unchanged. And unfortunately, the Stelvio shows its Italian roots by showing a little bit of a smaller cargo area. This right here is around 18.5 cubic feet. That's about half what you're going to get from something like a Volvo XC90 or a BMW X3 or Acura's new RDX. Underneath here, there is a little bit of storage. There's no spare tire, of course. This car does come with fix-a-flat kit, or I believe some of them also have run flats. And then if you want to fold down the seats, you get around 56 cubic feet of space, which is again about 10 to 20 cubic feet less than the competition. So be sure you guys pack a little bit lighter if you guys plan to add one of these to your garage. So stepping into the interior of the Stelvio Quadrifoglio, the first thing you're going to notice, it's an SUV, so it's easy to get in and out of. It doesn't feel that much lower than the standard TI that I drove a couple months ago, even though Alfa did lower this a little bit. Shutting the door, it still sounds nice and solid, so I wasn't expecting anything less. Now, here's the key fob for Alfa right now. It's the current key fob. It's massive, it's huge, but it does feel nice and heavy and sturdy in your hands. It does come with things like, you know, power liftgate open, and then remote start. To activate the remote start, double tap that button there. It actually takes a long time, but it finally starts up, and then you can set it to turn on the climate control like everything else. And if you guys want to get out of the remote start mode, just kind of get into the vehicle, put your foot on the brake, or actually it decided to shut off on me there. But to start it up, regardless, there's a button over here, and that'll start up the engine. Now, surprisingly, the engine sounds really quiet right now. It's in its dynamic setting. However, if you guys want the full, you know, Italian race, you know, noise that you hear with this car, flip it over to race. You can hear the exhaust gets louder. And it actually lets it rev up to like 6 grand. So, I mean, that is the whole reason why you bought a Quadrifoglio. But I'll talk about that later on in the test drive. So let's quiet down the engine a little bit and let's look at the interior of this car, because it's an SUV. You want the interior to be nice. And the Stelvio definitely makes a great first impression. There's lots of nice materials in this car, considering this is the Quadrifoglio. You have full stitching on this upper part of the dash with the contrasting red. It goes all over the instrument panel. This is real leather, real stitching, which is nice. You have authentic carbon fiber going across here, with some aluminum trim accenting the door vents. The door panels here also have the same soft touch leather with the carbon fiber. You have a aluminum door handle here. The windows are one touch express up down for all 4, which is again what I expected. There's a upgraded Harman Kardon sound system in this car with a 3-person memory that you're going to notice because it's got the metal speakers in this car. Good storage down here for your phone as well. And then the steering wheel. This is the optional $400 carbon fiber accented steering wheel. It actually is really nice. It has a flat bottom design, more aluminum trim. I love the red start-stop button here that you get with the Quadrifoglio models. And then with Alfa, you have these massive aluminum paddle shifters, which are mounted to the column. Love the paddles. They're the best in the business. Now, in terms of the gauge display, they've also been upgraded, but they look the same as the standard TI. You have a slightly higher Redline at around 6,700 RPM. You have a 200 mile per hour speedometer. As you guys know, this car will hit 176 miles per hour as its top speed. So that's really impressive sports car numbers. Now, the head unit here, this is the standard 8.8-inch display. It is not a touchscreen here, so don't be trying to use it as a touchscreen. And it's also kind of like a widescreen display, but there's a lot of unused real estate here. Alfa's system definitely hasn't been getting the best in terms of reviews. I didn't particularly love it in the regular Stelvio, but the one thing that Alfa did add for the Quadrifoglio and then for all 2019 Stelvio models is Apple CarPlay. So when you plug in your phone, you can see here it's got the full Apple CarPlay display, which is definitely nice. It's something this car really could have used. Again, it's not a touchscreen. You have to use this little click wheel here that kind of scrolls, it tilts. Not a touchpad over here as well, but if you want something, you kind of just have to click it and it'll take you there. The Apple CarPlay, as you guys know, basically works like everything else in the car. The media sources here, you know, you have your standard AM, FM, satellite radio. Navigation is also included. You can see here's the Alfa head unit here, which is very similar to what you find in some other FCA products. Nothing too, you know, impressive looking. So Alfa's definitely a little bit behind in terms of the tech in this car, but I'm glad to see they finally added Apple CarPlay. Now, putting the vehicle into reverse, you can see here, it just has a standard backup camera. It has trajectory, it has front and rear parking sensors, but no 360 camera. I was kind of hoping for that. No automatic parallel parking feature. Some competitors, again, offer you that feature, so that's something Alfa needs to work on. Down here, you can see you have your climate control settings. You have a basically interesting area where there's a USB, where there's all this wasted real estate space. I don't know why Alfa does that, but you can see here, heated steering wheel, you have heated seats, no cooled seats. I was very surprised to find no cooled seats. They could have just added some kind of feature in there. This controls the 8-speed automatic. It works like every other Alfa I've shown you. It's kind of like a BMW. There's a trigger on the front of the shifter. Push that, come back for drive, push it forward for reverse, and then park is by the P over there. And then it also has a manual mode if you guys don't want to use the paddles. This right here is for your drive mode selector, DNA, dynamic, natural, and advanced efficiency. And then when you have a Quadrifoglio, it adds race. You can also adjust the dampers settings if you guys want a little bit of a softer ride or a harsher ride, which is nice. The one thing I wish Alfa would add, and they haven't yet, is an exhaust loud button. Instead, you have to go into race mode to kind of get the full loudness. I want Alfa to add a full just exhaust loud button so I can kind of just just use it in its regular modes. This is pretty softly padded right here. It's the armrest lid, and then you have a pretty good amount of storage in here with 2 more USB ports and aux port. It's lined with felt, so it's relatively nice. Above me, there's a $1,500 panoramic sunroof, which is optional, lets in a lot of light, so it definitely helps with kind of brightening up this really dark cabin. But overall, I love the red stitching. I love the red contrast in here. And the interior is definitely nice, but it's definitely falling behind something like the Mercedes-Benz GLC or like an Audi SQ5. But overall, you're going to get in this and you're going to find a lot to like about the Stelvio. So as an SUV, you have to be able to use the rear seats, and this is an area where, again, the Stelvio kind of falls short of its competitors. The back seat is definitely not cramped by any means, but if you guys have spent some time in the competition, you'll notice that this is a little bit less space. Now, Alfa actually rates it at around 32 inches of legroom, which is actually a whopping 6 inches less than something like a Volvo. But you can see here, there's a hump in the floor here for the drive shaft, so it does take up space for the middle passengers. But I actually think the room is okay if you're not counting the numbers. I mean, there's really good foot space underneath here. There's some good knee space right here. I can kind of cross my legs relatively easily in this car, so I'd be okay on a shorter trip. I also have good headroom, and the seats themselves, they're really comfortable. Fold down this armrest here, you get, cup holders, no additional storage, but Alfa does include things like rear seat vents, 2 USB ports, but surprisingly no heated rear seats, no sunshades, but the materials in here are nice. You have 2 map pockets, and then there's lots of stitched leather on this part of the dash or on the door panel with more carbon fiber and red leather. So overall, it's not a terrible place to spend time. Just know that some competitors offer a lot more space than this. So typically when you talk about what's going on underneath the hood of an SUV, things aren't very exciting. However, when it's an Italian SUV, things get very exciting because this is the company's 505 horsepower, 2.9 liter twin turbo V6. If you guys remember, this is the same motor that I showed you in the Giulia sedan, the Quadrifoglio version. Same output numbers. It also has 443 pound-feet of torque. Now, the boost that this engine has is around 35 PSI of boost. That's a crazy amount of boost because this is a small 2.9 liter engine. If you guys also remember, this engine is kind of a derivative of the California T's V8 with 2 cylinders lopped off. Now, the Stelvio Quadrifoglio is heavier than the Giulia. This car weighs around 4,500 pounds. It comes standard with the company's all-wheel drive system, which is the biggest differentiation. Only an 8-speed automatic from ZF is the transmission available. And of course, fuel economy, in case you guys care, it is rated about 4 mpg lower than the standard model at 1723 on premium, of course. It's not too terrible, right in line with its competitors, but you guys have been waiting. Let's get it out on the road and see how it all performs, shall we? So when I last drove the Giulia Quadrifoglio, you guys remember I was pretty impressed with that car. It blew me away in terms of the handling, the feel, the visceral sounds of the engine. So I'm expecting a lot for the Stelvio, and it's adding the all-wheel drive grip that I was kind of wishing the Giulia had. So let's get out on the road in this 505 horsepower Italian SUV and see how it all performs, shall we? That noise, I miss that noise so much. The farts and the burbles from the exhaust are just incredible in this car. Let's try acceleration from a stop here. Brake torque it. Oh, Jesus. Holy crap. The burbles from that exhaust, oh my God, I cannot stop smiling. This is fantastic. Oh my God. And honestly, this is probably the best road that I could drive this car on. We are out here in the Santa Cruz Mountains with Alex on autos, and the roads here are just phenomenal. Like, this car is one of the best handling SUVs you can buy. Alfa says it has the quickest Nürburgring time in the industry of any SUV. And you really notice it when you start hustling it around these back roads here. It doesn't feel like an SUV at all. It feels like I'm driving a sports sedan that just has a little bit of a higher seating position. And that's the thing, is when you start pushing this thing around corners, the body doesn't even lean that much. The steering is also very quick and direct. It just could use a little bit more heft to it. Even in the race mode that I have it in here, it's still a little bit too light, and I wish it was a little heavier, but I want to try another acceleration run in this car. And I forgot I left it in manual mode there, but surprisingly, this car will not actually shift for you automatically when it's in manual mode. It will just kind of hold the revs there, and as I banged against the limiter. But Alfa says this car will get to 60 in around 3.8 seconds. I've seen it as quick as 3.6. It doesn't really feel as brutal as something like the Jeep Trackhawk that I drove when you first put your foot down. It does have a little bit of turbo lag. Even when I kind of brake boosted, this car doesn't actually have any launch control. The only thing you can do is kind of just brake torque it, which is a little disappointing. But man, when that turbo kicks in with all that boost, it just really shoves you hard into the back of your seat. It's incredible. And the best thing about this car has to be, though, the handling. It's really great visibility, really direct, communicative steering, great chassis. It just wants to just play, and you never have felt an SUV handle like this. This is without a doubt the best handling SUV I have ever driven this year. It's fantastic. It just really could use a little bit heavier steering feel. That's the one thing it could really use, is the heavier steering feel. God, I could do that all day long and just waste all that gas. This is just such a riot. Such a riot. Now, let's put it into its normal setting here and see how this feels when you're not driving it like a race car, even though you want to all the time. This is an SUV, so it has to also drive nicely, and the ride quality actually gets pretty comfortable when you put the, dynamic mode here selector, the DNA selector, into its normal mode here. The shocks go into a softer setting, and this car is relatively quiet still. You can kind of just drive it along here on this back road. The steering gets a little bit lighter, which kind of annoys me, but you're basically just kind of tootling along. There's barely any exhaust noise. And in terms of the road noise, it's a little bit higher because of these, sticky Pirelli summer tires. So you do hear more road noise, but the ride quality doesn't really beat you up. It is still firm. I mean, you've got 20-inch wheels you're dealing with here, so this is not like Lexus smooth, which is fine by me because this car is not a Lexus, it's an Alfa Romeo. And that's the beauty about this car, is it's such a great car. Now, in terms of the visibility, it's also pretty good. I have a good view out of the front, big side mirrors. You have the driver assistance that this car is included. That's part of $1,500. It doesn't have active lane keep assist, so instead, when you cross the lane departure alert will just beep, which is a little bit annoying. It doesn't actually steer you, which I would like it to. But I mean, overall, the driver assistance in this car is pretty class competitive, although it is lagging behind some of the more tech-oriented competition. God damn, this thing is so incredible. Now, the one thing I don't like about the race mode that you have to put it in to get this full visceral experience is it turns off the electronic stability control. It turns off the forward collision alert. So Alfa basically says, F you, if you guys are going to be crazy enough to put this into its race mode, if you screw up, you really screw up, and it's all your fault. So I wish Alfa would basically let me put the exhaust into its full loud mode with leaving the stability control in a sports setting, because what I found when this car was in its dynamic setting, it wasn't as aggressive as I'd like it to be. The ride still allowed for some body lean because the shocks weren't in the stiffest setting. The noise wasn't loud enough. God, I could get used to this. I could so get used to this. This is one incredible driving SUV that doesn't feel like an SUV at all. It's incredible. So if you guys are looking, if you're an enthusiast who needs an SUV and you've got $80,000 to spend, put this one at the very top of your list. So as crossovers continue to be the #1 choice here in America, spending the day with something like the Stelvio Quadrifoglio is one refreshing choice. Everything else just feels so bland, so similar, and so cookie cutter in comparison. And the Quadrifoglio version, I have to say, it lives up to the 4-leaf clover badge that you basically get with an Alfa Romeo product. As you guys saw from the test drive, the engine is the most charismatic engine in the segment, from the quick shifts of the automatic, to the noise from the exhaust system, to the handling. This car basically rewrites your brain. It makes you want to drive it more like a race car or a sports car as opposed to an SUV. And unfortunately, because it has more of a race car feel, you do get a little bit of sacrifices with the smaller interior, the slightly rougher ride. But to me, as an enthusiast, I would happily take that any day to drive something as exciting as the Stelvio Quadrifoglio. So if you guys are looking to put one of these in your driveway, what's it going to cost? Well, I'm sad to report that this is not a cheap proposition. The regular Stelvio actually is relatively cheap. It starts around $40,000. This one is double the price. It starts at a tick under $80,000 at $79,995. Add $1,500 for the outrageous destination because this car is built and shipped from Italy. My tester, with most of the options that it has, the $2,000 for the white paint, the panoramic sunroof for $1,500, the $1,500 for the driver assistance package, all in this one stickers for around $85,000, which sounds like a lot of money, and it is. It makes it a little bit more expensive than some of the competitors like a Mercedes GLC 63, although I will say the Benz has about 50 less horsepower than this. Or if you guys want to look like a Porsche Macan, you have to get the Turbo Performance, which is about $10,000 more expensive than this. So Alfa has priced this right, and if you guys had the money to afford something like this and you want a crossover that's not boring, that's very visceral, it's very exciting, this is one that should go at the top of your list. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2018 Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video. Now, this is the key fob that it comes standard in the vehicle. It's the current Alfa key fob. It's gigantic. It does come with things like power liftgate, and it also has remote start. So if you just kind of tap this button here,
nothing happens.
Rob, you ruined it. It started. It did. It took a long time.